It's that time of the month again, we're at the end. It's been a whole month of new records to talk about. I've done a bunch of reviews, some shorts as well, just to try something new. But here's a bunch of albums I haven't had the time to talk about in a full depth video. As usual, I'll go through the worst records to the ones I think are just alright, and then to the best ones. So starting off with the worst, we have Bones UK Soft. I got to be honest, I wanted to get into this one, but I just never really found Bones UK to be my cup of tea. From their debut, this isn't much of an improvement. I've just kind of found this one to be kind of weird. It's certainly a sound I just haven't really gotten used to. Maybe with time will grow on me, but as of the whole listen, I just don't think the instrumentation is anything impressive. Some of it reminds me of Royal Blood blended in with this whole pop mix of rock and all sorts. It's interesting, but just not really my cup of tea. I gave it a 2 out of 5. Snow Patrol's new album, The Forest is the Path, also is not one I enjoyed. Got to be honest as well, it's unfortunate, as I think Snow Patrol have had some decent releases back in the day, but here I don't think it quite brings in the best of their sound, and this whole album just kind of feels like stuff we've heard from the band. Nothing that feels too original in my opinion, as well as having some decent stuff. The problem with it is that there's nothing that sounds sonically terrible. It's just that I think it really feels like something I expected and heard already from the band, so it hasn't really been an album that stuck with me. I'll have to give that one a 2 as well. And Art of Dying, Won't Look Back, probably the weakest in general in this album, because whereas the first two albums I talked about, one of them's not for me and the other one just kind of feels like it's doing a similar thing we've already heard. This one is just terrible when it comes to the mixing. I think, especially when you dive through the first few tracks, especially with the feature of Adelitas Way, it isn't really that interesting in my opinion. The only song I really cared about was the So Far Away one with Thousand Foot Grudge, because that was a song intended for the 2024 Thousand Foot Grudge comeback of The End Is Where We Begin, and the fact that they put this track on the album is quite baffling. The mixing is awful. I don't think it has anything interesting. It feels very generic down to the bone. I did not really care for this one. I'll have to give it a 2 out of 5 as well. That's all the worst albums, so let's dive straight into the alright next. Starting off is the final album by Our Hollow, Our Home, Hope and Hell. This one, it was interesting. I did like a few of the singles, but as a whole record, I couldn't quite get into it. I feel there's just something with this, it just kind of feels familiar. Not just that, but it also doesn't have too much to go for. I think the tracks are decent enough, but not solid enough to be a good album in my opinion. And especially for a final album, it kind of feels like there's already a lot of tension with the band, hence why the band split up. More so the fact that all the members minus the original member Tobias had left the band because of the just the way they were treated and disrespected. It's not a sign I think band members should do, and shouldn't put their music in front of everyone else and make the band feel like it's just their project. But with Our Hollow, Our Home, it doesn't really matter in my opinion. I think even if the band were engaged as we're recording it, it's not one of my favourite albums, probably my least favourite. So it's just an alright record in my opinion. I'm interested to see what the new project the band's doing though from that point on. Boston Manor, Sundiver. I never fully listened to Boston Manor, so I gave it a listen, and I think the album has got some good pop punk elements to it, as well as some easy core to an extent, but mainly in the pop punk, just hard rock genre. They got some good ideas with. There's some tongue-in-cheek moments in there. There's a lot of genre going. You get some tracks that are going for this more calmer aesthetic. You got an acoustic very track. You also got one that has like this little industrial repeated beat to it. I love how they're experimenting, but I think it just often leads to a lot of weaker stuff. I think the best stuff is when they kind of stick to the formula and their guns here, especially the first few tracks being really kick-ass. I think the rest of the record just kind of struggles to live up to that. It's kind of a whatever album, in my opinion. Some good ideas, but I just wish it was more consistent than that. Oceans of Slumber, Where Gods Fear to Speak. The band keeps trying to change their identity when it comes to genre, which is weird, but from what I've heard from this, it's fine. I think the new additions they have is good. I like the growls, but I feel like they just kind of sprinkle them in a way that's not well put together. It just kind of feels like it's abrupt here and there, and it hasn't been certainly my cup of tea. I'm not really the biggest fan of the new voice anyway of this band, nor have I really been a huge a fan of Oceans of Slumber in the first place, but I still think the results are fine. I think there's some good riffs. I think especially the first track, self-titled track, is the best song in my opinion. I think it's a good opener, but I don't think they quite deliver the consistency for this record. But yeah, I still think there's some good stuff to it. And God Is An Astronaut, Embers. I remember seeing God Is An Astronaut live at the Radar Festival last year, and the biggest problem is the fact that they were the only band to have technical difficulties numerous times. It doesn't take away anything from them as a band. I've quite enjoyed some of their sounds, and for a post-rock band, they got some good ideas. This one is pretty much almost entirely, vocal-less. It's mainly focusing on instrumentals, as they do a lot. And I think it has some good ideas, and I think it does have some nice colour to it, but then you just got to a feature for the same person to feature in 2 tracks, and I kind of like that sound a little more because it gives a little more creativity and uniqueness to it, whereas we've kind of heard what they've done throughout this record a bunch of times. It's nothing bad, it's just sticking to the formula, and it can get a bit worn, but I don't dislike it. And that's all the alright albums. We're moving on to the best. So, starting off, we have the Black Dahlia Murder, Servitude. This one I was really looking forward to, and I must say, I'm actually kind of disappointed by the final results of it. Probably one of the weakest records, as I feel like the writing isn't quite there. The vocals are amazing, though. The lead singer, in case you don't know, had passed away, and the guitarist stood up being the front man, as well as the main writer. And he does a really good job. I've nothing wrong to say about that. I just think it's the writing, and just in general, it's not as engaging as earlier works, but I think it still holds up, especially having to go for this new direction. It's not the most thrilling album, and for a comeback, especially with I guess you could say a lineup change, I think it works quite well. And even if the album isn't that great, props to the guy for stepping up, because his vocals are definitely the highlight of the record. Amazing uncleans. The mixing is definitely one of the problems I had with it as well. I think sometimes the guitars are just drowned out in the mix, and it's not as nice in my opinion, but still I like it. We have Future Palace, Distortion. I actually really enjoyed this record. I think as you get towards the end, it kind of repeats and does the same thing again. There's not really much new to get out of the record when you get to like the 8th or 9th track, but when you're going through the first bunch, you got some amazing stuff, especially the Echoes track, which has Charlie Rolfe from As Everything Unfolds. I love that one. There's a lot of insane moments on this, and I think they really take the heavier side, which they haven't really explored, to a whole new level. I really enjoy it. Really fun album. Quite a good one. I'll give this one a 3.5 out of 5. And if I haven't given Black Dahlia Murder one yet, I meant to give it a 3. We have Heriot, Devoured by the Mouth of Hell. Now, Heriot is a local band to me. One band that's actually formed in my town, and for a upcoming metalcore band that's trying to get their name out there, they're pretty good. I honestly say a lot of metalcore just kind of comes to being a bit stale these days, especially when it's not more or less stale, just it feels like a staled direction that a lot of bands take to a similar approach. But Heriot have some really harsh moments to some very soft stuff. I love the way the cleans are sprinkled to then blast out some very heaviness, and sometimes the heavy just sounds like it really comes from the pit of hell. Foul Void was an amazing single, and the fact that this opened up the album is great. And then you end up with tracks like Mourn, which is a really good finale. Pretty good album. I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. I think there are elements I think drag on a bit, but for a whole record it is so fun. It's definitely an album I recommend. Nightwish, Yesterwynde. This is the final album before the hiatus, which we don't know how long that's going to be, a few years probably. And for symphonic metal, I think it does the job quite well. I'm not the biggest fan of the genre, as I don't think many people like my Within Temptation view, but I actually like Yesterwynde's approach on here. I think it's got some nice ideas, vocals are beautiful, the mixing sounds great, and for symphonic metal, it plays into the format quite well. I like the structure, and I think it's got some originality to it, and Nightwish is definitely one of the big names in it, one of the ones that I think has a lot of respect tied to the name, and I can see it there. It's not my favourite, but I give it 3.5 out of 5. Definitely think it's a good album still. And finally, we're ending off with Origami Angel, Feelings Not Found. Fucking hell. Okay, so every album I've reviewed in September on this video has been good, but I've not had anything incredibly good until this. This album is insane. It's an album that plays with pop punk easy core elements, similar to 4 Years Strong, but in my opinion it does it so much better. Tracks like Fruit Wine is just amazing. I love the way that the softness of it is hit clear. Sometimes you get some heavy riffs, but then you get some easy core breakdowns which are impressive, and this ties into so many tracks I enjoy. Viral has an amazing amount of heaviness when it comes to this breakdown, but the chorus is so gorgeous. And one of my personal favourite songs in a long time is not what I expected the title to be, HM07 Waterfall, which, in case you don't know, is a hidden machine item in Pokemon, which I found really cool, and the breakdown on that one is incredible. The song has just been so stuck in my head that this has been one of my favourite songs in a long time. The album is just amazing. You get the slow start, but then you go into 13 more tracks just full of all of this stuff, and Feeling Not Found is a bit of a different, slower vibe as a final track, but it fits so well. It's an amazing record, and it definitely one of the album of the year contenders. 4.5 out of 5 for me is incredible. And that is my September albums of the month. I did this all in one take as well. I just find it's easier because every time I've had to re-record this, the audio keeps playing up, being different from each other, whereas if I can do it in one continuous take, it's definitely less jarring. So there you go. We have a September albums of the month, and then we're going to see what October brings us. But September's had some pretty good bangers. I mean, 156 Silence, yep, that's definitely one of my favourite records, People Watching, and Feeling Not Found, Origami Angel are definitely some of my favourite albums this year. So I hope you all enjoy. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next video.